I have until, I'll give it one more minute.
Recording in progress.
Yeah. So I'm going to call this, in honor of my colleague Trina Brown Hicks, I'm going to call this inaugural meeting of the Economic Environment and Resiliency Commission to order. If any of you have ever been to an African American Heritage Commission meeting, Trina used to really enjoy banging this gavel. So I've always wanted to do it. Anyhow. Mary Lou, do we have you online?
We do. I am saying hello from the east side of Manhattan.
Okay. Well, we hope to have you back here shortly. But thank you for making the effort to join us virtually. Much appreciated. So I'll start with some opening remarks, and then we'll go through our draft mission statement, talk a little bit about that, and then form a subcommittee. And so this really, more than anything, is an organizational meeting. We're certainly not going to discuss a lot of substance, so to speak, regarding projects and others, but just kind of, inform the community and ourselves a little bit about where we are and where we're going to go. This commission was formed primarily in response to the City of Lewis creating a Lewis Resiliency Fund. And the Resiliency Fund initially has been seeded with $1.4 million from the city. We hope to increase that approximately $500,000 every year through a portion of various tax revenue sources, such as the short-term rental tax, parking tax, and a few other sources. And I think, and Brent, you can address this as well, but I think in the first 5 years, we hope to generate between 5 and 7 million, but I think we are limited in the first 5 years to spending no more than $850,000. And that may sound like a small amount of money, but it probably really isn't, because we're talking about a lot of cost shares and with government funding. So,
and the point of it is to build the nest egg up substantially towards that 5 million and try to keep that, and
correct.
Then eat back off, but keep 5 million in there. While we can't start at 5 million, we've got to head in that direction, so we limited spending in the first.
Right, because the Resiliency Fund really has two prongs to it. One is, and most resiliency funds and municipalities are focused on long-term resiliency, meaning, in a sense, there's a nest egg of resources available if another Hurricane Sandy or something hits, that a municipality can delve into and use to keep the government running. Of course, we have reserves for that as well, but helping the community bounce back. Bounce back seems to be kind of the buzzword that when you hear resiliency. Resiliency doesn't mean we're going to stop a storm. It means we're going to bounce back quicker. Instead of 2.5 or 3 months for our businesses and maybe city government to reopen, hopefully it'll be 2.5 or 3 weeks. So that's the goal when it comes to resiliency. Nevertheless, we want to have, we kept in there, we included, which other communities have not, an opportunity, which I mentioned earlier. Rich, please join us up here.
Great, thank you.
We included the opportunity to invest in short-term projects, meaning the subcommittee that we're soon going to form, the 4th Street Preserve Subcommittee, that is a resiliency project in many aspects. It's a preservation project. There's also resiliency aspects to it. We have another project we can talk about a little bit later when we go through the draft, but we want to balance it between short-term investments and a long-term nest egg to help us bounce back. So that's really what we're talking about. And now that Rich Ennis is here, I want to introduce the members of the committee. Rich Ennis is our chairman of our Lewis Planning Commission, and he will serve on the committee. We don't know what title we're going to give you yet, Rich, but I'm thinking about it, okay? Okay? You're already chairman of one committee.
Bated breath to find out, yeah, it'll be.
Next to Rich is Janelle Cornwell, our city planner, and I think most everyone's familiar with Janelle. and hopefully in a good way. Although Janelle has the unfortunate job sometimes of telling people, you can't do that. That's not code compliant. So anyhow, it's a very tough job. To my left is Brent Jett. Brent is a engineer with GMB, our city engineer, longtime city engineer. Brent has a particular expertise in stormwater management, flood mitigation. Brent, you want to add to that? What's your handicap in golf now?
6.2.
6.2. He has expertise in golf. Anything else?
Coastal resiliency,
Yep.
green-gray infrastructure, retrofitting. I come from the world of hardcore civil engineering, so I know how things were built. So I understand how to retrofit them on the back end, which is a pretty good skill to have when you're dealing with a town when the founding date starts with a 16. So there are many of them on the shore, and I think I've worked in all of them, so.
Great. Thank you. Dale? Yep. And I also want to acknowledge Mary Lou Wellbrook Reeves, who is, as she said, is joining us from the east side, Upper East Side?
Yeah, Upper
Okay.
East Side.
Upper East Side, not East Side, Upper East Side of New York. Mary Lou has a very unique role on this commission, and she's the reason why it's called Economic Environment and Resiliency Committee, because sometimes people look at resiliency as, kind of an environmental issue, which it is. Nevertheless, it's also about the economics of a community, economics of property values, economics of city services and small businesses. And Mary Lou also served on the Lewis Finance Committee. Mary Lou, you also served on the Stewardship Committee too, correct?
Right, so I was on the Stewardship Committee, and then the last year and a half or so, Tina Sampson, who heads up the Finance Committee with Joe Elder, there's a subcommittee there, the Investment Committee. And
Yes.
so it seemed to me to make sense, since this fund is going to grow significantly, at least we hope it's going to grow significantly, that we don't need to tap it, that it would make sense to have somewhat of a liaison
Exactly.
between the investment side of the Finance Committee as well as this particular commission. The other thing, and I think, Khalil, you know this, is a background in municipal government in the sense that I served as an elected official for 8 years.
Yep.
I have some familiarity, general familiarity with planning concepts, as I served on a planning board and a board of adjustment. And then lastly, because I was involved in the start of an open space committee in Morris County, New Jersey, many, many years ago, decades ago, that was the very beginning. I was at the start of that very beginning and trying to sort out rules and how are we going to disperse funds and all that. So I thought perhaps my background might lend itself well to this venture.
Absolutely, and you captured it very, very well. Your service on the Finance Committee is going to be invaluable to us, and again, I think one of the aspects that's underreported and understated sometimes is the economics of resiliency, and so thank you very much, Mary Lou, appreciate it. So again, as I mentioned, it's kind of an organizational meeting, but I certainly wanted to, and I don't want to waste people's time. I want to be able to go through some documentation, share some ideas, and then move on to the second item, which is essentially the creation of the 4th Street Preserve Subcommittee. But we have in front, Blue, can we go to you have the city of, this, okay, there we go. Excellent. One of the things I wanted to share with my colleagues here and online, as well as everyone in the audience, is our mission statement. And in particular, where we are now, but necessarily doesn't mean that this is going to remain static. I mean, this can evolve, and it hopefully will evolve, because hopefully we'll learn from, some missteps perhaps, or some new ideas that come forward, and There's no pride in authorship here. We just want to get things right and do what we can to help the city. So the core roles simply are, we're an advisory role to the city leadership. That's pretty self-explanatory, particularly on the resiliency in the area. We definitely want to do more community engagement, community public awareness, education. We want people to understand that, because a lot of money is we're talking about $1.4 million, we're talking about $500,000 a year. These are significant, resources. So people deserve to know why we are putting such a priority on this. And this will go back, a lot of it, to the idea that we want to protect our city long-term, but also protect our property values. Sometimes people don't want to talk about that, but if you talk to local realtors, and we'll do more than that now, when we increased Freeboard, it was pretty stunning to talk to a select number of realtors who mentioned that potential buyers were very, very interested in and wanted to know about what the city was doing to protect the community from a major storm event. So I think that whole issue will evolve. Planning and policy support, we have the Lewis Planning Commission, led by Rich Innes here, and we're going to want to hear what they have to say, liaison with them, and Rich is the perfect liaison for what they're doing, particularly when it comes to the comp plan. Yes. There'll be hopefully a resiliency piece in the comp plan as well, and that process will start when, Rich?
It's already in process.
Okay.
We are about to hire a consultant. We have thanks to Janelle, we already have an RFP on the street, and that will jumpstart that process.
Great. The fourth bullet here is something I alluded to earlier, and that's project development and oversight. We're gonna look for opportunities to invest in, to explore, investigate, research, and potentially invest in. And it's public knowledge already that there's been a long time issue on Cedar Street towards the end near California Avenue. And Brent, I think you can add to this. We've had public discussions about building a berm there and having floodgates that would regulate the flow of water from the marsh towards Cedar Street. And anybody who knows, most people know that the water that comes on Cedar Street and a lot of the area comes from the marsh, not the bay. And so we are exploring that. Brent, do you want to just mention quickly what's the status of that?
So we're close to getting permitted for the geotech investigation out there. Once we complete the geotech investigation, then we can work on the design of the berm itself to make sure that, as I'm sure some people remember, the Indian River Bridge where it was overloaded too quickly and sank, make sure that we don't do that and we actually achieve a top elevation for protection out there.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, so that's certainly one of the projects. Another project which the city has already invested in will come up later, is the 4th Street Preserve and the implementation of the master plan, which will happen soon, I think, fairly soon. So those are just two examples, but we're obviously going to be looking to develop more opportunities, and long as they're consistent with the resources that we have. The 5th bullet here is emergency preparedness collaboration. So in the past, the city has had a hazard mitigation committee. Former Mayor Becker and I sat on that with Chatham Marsh, former officer in the city of Lewis. Chatham was here 19 years and and took a new job, I think, with the Delaware Fire Service. I may have the name wrong, but Chatham was an incredible resource. He was essentially the chair of that committee, even though I think his title was co-chair. He really lived and breathed mitigation, hazard mitigation, and did a wonderful job in developing our plan for the city, where our command control was going to be, liaison with BB Healthcare, things like that. But he left a couple of years ago. The committee has been dormant since then, is a good word. However, I do think, not today, and maybe not even our next meeting, but soon enough, we're going to have deliberations and talk about maybe establishing a hazard mitigation subcommittee. There are people in our community who have expressed interest. I see Thierry Poirier, who's here, who has done some work on the Cape and Lopin State Park. What would we do with a wildfire, for example, in that area, and how do we manage that? So there's not only interest from the community, I think it's actually our duty to ensure that we have an updated hazard mitigation plan, and we'll talk about that later, but that's what that plan is. The last
Excuse
bullet.
me, Khalil?
Yes, ma'am.
Khalil? May I just add something to that?
Please, absolutely.
Okay, because one of the things when I read through the draft that, it didn't concern me, but it just raised an issue in my mind was making sure that we have coordination with Sussex County and also the state on the various resources that might be available. And this hazardous committee that you're talking about, I'm sure they were involved with that when they were active, but we need to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts or that we're taking advantage of opportunities that we may not know about without having that liaisonship.
Thank you, Marilyn, and you're exactly right. And the previous mitigation plan, there certainly was coordination, and I forgot the gentleman's name. I think his last name was Thomas in Sussex County. He had been there.
It was Joe Thomas.
Joe Thomas, yeah. Really wonderful source of information and support from, he retired, but nevertheless, I think they're in good hands from what I understand. And so, yes, Mary Lou, good point. There will be collaboration, and that actually takes us to the sixth point, which is collaboration and partnerships. And that really, what Mary Lou touched on, is we want to make sure, not just with the hazard mitigation subcommittee, assuming it will be formed, but we want to make sure we are working in collaboration with other municipalities, the county, on others, on resiliency. I mean, just to give you a quick example, this morning I participated for a short time. I had run to another meeting on a bi-monthly meeting of municipalities in Sussex County with the governor's office. And we were talking about beach replenishment, resiliency, and I certainly offered to them that Lewis we're having our inaugural EERC meeting this afternoon. I explained what it was, and that because I know some of the other communities, Bethany in particular, and Bethany's mayor, Ron Califf, was on the Zoom call, was very interested. So, we certainly are focused on Lewis, but I think it benefits us and our region if we are in collaboration with others and try to help them and learn from them as well. But that also means the state government and the federal government. So we're going to do what we can, and maybe nonprofits out there that serve. And of course, that also means the Cape and Lopin School District, BB Healthcare, big institutional stakeholders in the community. And please, as Mary Lou did, jump in, anyone, if they have questions or they want to ask something. I think with regards to public comment, I have to get up to speed on rules, but maybe at least for this meeting, if you have a question, because it's an organizational meeting, I have no problem raising your hand and coming to the podium. The rest of this document really is more, governance. Right now we're at 5 members. We are working on the bylaws, and I certainly hope that we can have the opportunity to expand if needed. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of very large committees. Sometimes they get unwielding, but I would like everyone who's on the committee to have some sort of focus, some sort of expertise that would assist in the committees.
And Khalil, I would just add to that we don't, even if someone is not on the committee, like we have Thierry here, we have other expertise in the community, we can tap that kind of ex officio as needed.
Yes.
Because I agree with you that once you get a big committee that presents.
Yeah, it can be a little bit unwieldy, but again, I mean, this is going to be a committee with a clear mission, but also flexibility to adjust to changing circumstances. And so I think that's our goal.
We're going to be resilient.
We're going to be resilient. We're going to be agile. How's agile?
There you go.
Okay. So I think we've never really, this is our first meeting. I think we should one of the things we're maybe supposed to do or should do is elect a chair and a vice chair amongst our voting members. The voting members are Mary Lou, Rich, and myself. I don't know if that means a non-voting member can make a motion?
No.
They cannot? Okay.
Not.
So this is something that's new to me. We haven't really discussed this.
Can I make a motion that we elect Khalil as our chair? Is that in order?
Well,
You need a second.
you need a second.
Oh, second.
Oh, then I'm going to make, now I'm making a motion.
You need to know.
I know. All right. The chair, Khalil Saliba, myself, has been nominated to be chair. And I would say the acting chair has been nominated to be chair. So I will then call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All against? Nope. So I've now been elected chair of the EERC committee. Thank you, everyone. But now we have to elect a vice chair. So I am going to make can the chair make a motion?
Mary Lou can make a motion.
Go, Mary Lou.
I nominate Rich Ennis as vice chair of this committee.
That makes it interesting,
There's a
because
lot of
I have
choices
like a veto here if I don't second that.
That's right. You could pocket veto.
I will second that. I was a little concerned, to be honest, that, Rich has his hands full with the planning commission,
Of course.
and being vice chair, but I think really, if you look at the vice chair really is designed to be chairing meetings and other things when the chair is not available. So-
Can I just add to that, Khalil?
Yes.
I think this committee is going to grow in terms of membership. It's
Okay.
not just going to be a few of us. It's going to be more expansive as things move along. Maybe you're just acting vice at this particular point. What a term. And then we actually hold a formal, vote when the committee is larger. It's just a thought,
I
which
think
I
that-
agree, or Khalil, I agree, Rich, you've got to have your
that's a-
hands
No,
plenty
that's
full with
fair.
the planning commission, but I am not able to serve in that capacity at this point.
Right. So what would be the motion then? What do you think would be?
I believe, would I amend the motion, or would I withdraw the motion?
So right now, the chair has been elected, so it's just, there's a motion for the vice chair that's been made and seconded.
So she could.
You
run
can-
the-
Can I withdraw the motion
Or the
For the
vice
vice
chair?
chair.
Yes.
with everyone's understanding, do I have a thumbs up that I should go ahead and withdraw the motion?
I'm a little confused.
You can either name him and replace him later, or you can vacate it now, not name, and when there's 5 voting members, name a vice.
Yes.
Or, third option, name him temporary vice now with the understanding.
I'm personally fine with Mary Lou, you withdrawing it, and I don't want to get hung up on
Yeah.
parliamentary
Okay, I'm gonna-
stuff.
Because I made the motion, let me go ahead and withdraw or vacate the motion as it stands.
And
as it was
I
done.
will withdraw my second as well.
Perfect.
Right, perfect.
Okay, so we have a chair, and that's the only current officer.
Correct.
Excellent. So with that, I'd like to move on, and again, anyone has any questions, let me know, to the second item, B2 on our agenda, and that is the creation of a 4th Street Preserve Subcommittee. The quick background here is on Monday, less than a week from now, September 15th, the Greater Lewis Foundation and the Rollins family will go to the settlement table on the 29-30 acres of the 4th Street Preserve. I believe the Greater Lewis Foundation will have ownership of that for about 30 seconds, and then assign that over to the city of Lewis. Then the city, then the GLF, and perhaps the city in collaboration will issue a release and announce the settlement. That will be determined. But we all believe it's important, at least from the city perspective, and I know the GLF perspective, as the city have in place a subcommittee that can liaison with the GLF's Implement Master Plan Task Force. They have created a task force that is going to be focused on implementing the concept plan that has thus far been shared, but also there needs to be additional fundraising to the tune, I think, around $850,000, I think is the target right now. So while the GLF task force is working on that, the city of Lewis will have a 4th Street Preserve subcommittee that will essentially function as an oversight committee. It really is not there, frankly, to be micromanaging what the GLF is doing, but it is there to offer resources, to offer counsel, to be there, and for us, for the committee, to understand exactly what's going on there so they can report back to the community as to what's going on. So we can update the community on the various developments. If it's ahead of schedule, we'll report that. If there's a delay due to contractor issues, we'll report that. But we want the community to know what is going on and the status of the project. When the project has been completed, the subcommittee will probably undergo a little bit of a change because the mission will change a little bit from oversight to maintenance. And there'll be oversight of the maintenance because the city will have responsibility for maintenance. So what that looks like, we're not really sure. But when we get to that point, as we continue down the road and watch the implementation, I think we'll have a clearer idea what that may look like. I do want to thank, there have been a number of people in the community who have volunteered for this subcommittee and all had very good backgrounds, rationales, experience to do this. But we selected 5, and the 5, because they're primarily going to be very important in the beginning stages of this on the oversight. They have various skill sets that can be an advantage to the GLF as they move forward. So I will announce, who we have selected.
Could I?
Sure. I should be asking if anybody has questions. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that there have been so many people in this community just broadly to have made this happen. And I think, all of us have probably been, very supportive of this in many different ways. So it is just, the thanks cannot be enough to a broad spectrum of people. But a kind of a question, or at least an observation maybe that I have, is that the purpose of this subcommittee, at least as I see it, is not simply to just to keep citizens posted, but to actually have a voice for the city and the community as to how this shapes up. Because there are a lot of questions that still remain. And we've seen some of them already aired. I won't go into that. That will be a source of a lot of discussion. But I think that the city needs to have a voice in how this is ultimately implemented, what exactly this 4th Street Preserve is going to look like. And so anyway, I kind of throw that out there, but kind of more as a question than.
Well, I think there's no question that the community has already expressed interest just by the level of interest in serving on this subcommittee. I mentioned Thierry earlier. Marty Thompson's in our audience, and Marty is our city tree commissioner, and has a very strong background in tree and issues and park issues, although we always like to keep reminding people this will be part of the education. This is not a park, this is a preserve.
Yes.
And there will not be a lot of amenities and recreational opportunities presented by the 4th Street Preserve. That's not the intent here. So, but I do think there will be a fine balance between oversight, ideas, but also, frankly, letting the task force do its job. let them move forward, let them understand ideas, concerns, compliments, but really, it's important that we keep moving forward, and hopefully right after the settlement, and after there's an announcement of the settlement, there'll be an announcement of of this committee and other committees, and hopefully that will kickstart the movement forward on taking the concept plan to fruition.
Good.
Great. So the members of the committee. So I will chair that committee, subcommittee. Joining me there from the staff of the City of Lewis will be Janet Reeves. Janet is our deputy city manager. Also lives really close to the 4th Street Preserve, but also has been prior to deputy city manager, was our Parks and Rec administrator, so she understands a lot of what's needed, even though this is not a park. She will have a better sense of, she's got a good feel for the community, especially where she lives, and so she'll be able to gather a lot of intel from that area. Pam Costanzi, who, if anybody contributed to the 4th Street Preserve project, knows who Pam is. She, along with Jim Ford, who's in our audience, co-chaired essentially the campaign, and really, I can't say enough about not only the good work that they did, but how much time this takes to meet with people in their homes and their living rooms, meet them out, follow up emails. It's a really impressive feat to raise $8 million in 2.5 years. And that came from a variety of sources. Almost $3 million came from private donations. The city contributed $1 million. Foundations in the state and others, $3 million. And I mean, there was a lot of various sources, and we all know applying for funding with foundations is not easy. It can be frustrating sometimes, and can be time consuming. So Pam certainly has a passion for 4th Street. She spent 2.5 years working on this, and I think she'll be a real asset to the city in knowing what the campaign, what people's thoughts are, and also assisting in fundraising, frankly, from the set.
Great that she's doing it.
Sally Boswell is also has agreed to join the subcommittee. Sally is here in the audience, and Sally has such a broad environmental background from the inland bays and her service here in the community, and her ability to cross along various constituencies, not only within the environmental committee, but in the city of Lewis, has been highly recommended to me. I met with Sally not long ago, and she has very strong and good coffee, if anybody wants to stop by Highland Acres. It was really an enjoyable meeting, and I think one of the real challenges in forming a committee and having a successful committee is collegiality, and it's important that we all have opinions, and we all should have opinions, but in the end, we need to get to a yes answer or an end game, and I'm very confident Sally's going to play a key role in that area. Our last member is Andrew Lyons, who is over here to my left. Andrew is an engineer with the City of Lewis through GMB, just like Brent. Andrew, I think, will be important for 2 reasons. One is he will ensure that Rodney and Jim and their task force needs any information is in compliance with city codes and other codes to make sure that that's working. And also, Andrew is incredibly talented and has a lot to offer in terms of ideas and suggestions. Again, we don't want to be, this 4th Street Preserve doesn't want to be pushy or anything or heavy-handed, but we want to be able to relay and have a collegial relationship with the task force. So Andrew, thank you for your willingness to serve, and I think it's going to be, I think you and Rodney are going to have to spend probably some quality time together, but I think it will all work out in the end. So anyhow, that's our 4th Street Preserve Subcommittee, and in terms of next meetings, I think one of the things, I will get in touch with this Economic and Environment Resiliency Commission to schedule our next meeting. Probably, I hope to do it within a month or so. I will reach out to the 4th Street Preserve Subcommittee to also schedule a similar meeting. And don't be surprised if it might be even on the same day or within an hour or two of each other, because that may make sense for, certainly would make time sense for me, but for others as well, because, there may be cross-pollinations, folks wanting to come to the EERC Commission meeting, but also going to the 4th Street meeting. So we can keep them back-to-back. That might be, it might be helpful to everybody. So that's all I have. I do want to, before we turn over to public comment, I want to ask anybody on the commission here if they have anything they want to add or comments or any comments. I think Janelle has something to say.
No, I was just going to say, if there's any changes to the core values or the mission, we can make those and get them back out to the members. So it's reflective of exactly what everybody would like.
Yeah, and exactly, I think, and if anybody has any comment, feel free to email us if you have ideas, but we want to get this finalized. I think it's in good form. It doesn't mean that it can't be improved, but it's in a good spot right now. But I think most important is the core goals and the mission, and hoping that is clear, and we will continue to educate people about that as well.
And just from other work that I've done on more of a national level, this is a very progressive step for the city of Lewis to take. I hope that we all realize that. This is something that a lot of other communities wish that they had done, that found themselves in a position where when the unthinkable happened, they were not prepared. They did not have funds. They did not have resiliency measures in place. As Khalil has pointed out, their economies suffered terribly, and it took them a very long time to rebound. What we are trying to do here is get ahead of the curve. And one of the projects that I worked on, it was several years ago, but it was in creating a fund out in the Pacific Northwest for salmon restoration. You might think, well, that doesn't have that much to do with this, but it actually did, because that was a bellwether for the environmental health of that region. One thing that we did very early on was we made sure that the funds that had been allocated were put to extremely good use, that there was all the words that we have in here. There was transparency, there was community input, there was a real intention, manipulation in any way, that they were going to the best projects that scored the highest on the criteria that we had. And that, what that did was that invested the community with trust in what we were doing and resulted in a great deal of support. We need to replicate that here early on. It's the old thing, but you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. We need to do this. We just need to make sure that we are on the straight and narrow here from the start. And I think that what we're doing today and the document that we have is an excellent start for that process.
And I'll build on that real quick. This whole process has not been in the dark. It's been, strange to say, 5 or 6 years coming in the discussions. You're one of the first communities to implement it. Like I mentioned before, I've worked with many communities on the shore that started in 1600 and still aren't where Lewis is today. Maryland has implemented the rain tax, as they call it, in several communities, but it has very minute guardrails on what it can be spent for. This opens up a lot. And given the climate of where FEMA stands today, where funding stands today, this isn't the end-all be-all answer to it, but you are light years ahead of others. So you should be commended for that.
Let me comment on, Brent makes a really good point, and it reminds me of a meeting we had about 3 hours ago. And let's just say in the meeting we had, one of the points we were making is that, and this was revolving beach replenishment. And one of the points we were making amongst ourselves, not to any regulator or anyone, was, wow, you know what? We deserve this, we need to do that, we need to have replenishment because we already have skin in the game. We have a resiliency fund, we are doing our part to protect from flooding and other problems here, and hoping that that would establish credibility with DENREC or in the state. And as we were talking about that, it also was pointed out to us that, you know what, that could actually have a negative effect, because if DENREC is looking at Lewis and saying, wow, they're raising all this money to do this, and you know what, they don't need our cost share. They can just come out of their resiliency fund, and they'll go use their limited funding to go support a smaller community that doesn't have any funding. So we have to manage that. I mean, that was a really good point that was raised this morning, and we want DENREC to know that we are a partner and that we're not expecting them to come in 100% and just save us every time that there's a storm. We want them to know we have skin in the game too, and that's what the Resiliency Fund and others are. But we also don't want them to use as an excuse to bypass Lewis and say we're shifting funding elsewhere. So those are some of the dynamics that might not be, seen to the naked eye, but some things that we're going to learn as we go through this process, this commission, how we need to work in collaboration, our 6th point, with our partners out there.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Andrew, any comments? Anything?
Excuse me,
Yeah,
Khalil.
Mary Lou, go ahead.
Is it satisfactory that we as a committee endorse this, or does it have to go to mayor and council for their support?
Oh, it would. You mean a specific project?
For the mission statement, that you've outlined here in the draft.
I think this is a draft.
Right, I
Yeah,
understand.
so I
but if
think,
it
I
was
don't think
final,
that they have to approve
Then
it.
have to be acted upon by
No.
mayor and council?
No. I mean, one of the,
Bylaws maybe, but not the mission statement.
yeah, the bylaws are being worked on,
Okay.
but the mission statement, I think, is, yeah, but we'll double check that. It's a fair point, Mary Lou.
Okay.
Before we adjourn, I do want to ask if Rodney or Jim want to come up and maybe explain a little bit about any update you may have on your end. If you don't, I mean, obviously, we still have the settlement to worry about. Yeah. It's not?
It is.
Oh. Right. I'll leave.
Rodney Robinson, 203 Canary Drive. Very happy to be involved in this stage of the process. This is where we're going to take a conceptual master plan, which I hope you've all had a chance to look at, and we're going to take it and turn it into a specific design with dimensions, materials, and eventually get it to a point where it can be, we can have a request for proposals and have contracting companies come in and implement the trail system and the other things that go into the plan. Balanced with that, we have a major volunteer group, and the master naturalists are chomping at the bit to get started, and they'll be led by Scott Wilkinson. So this task force right now consists of me, Jim Ford, Scott Wilkinson, and Taryn Douglas, and she's with the State Forestry Department. And they are key players in this. They hold the conservation easement over the property, and they also have tremendous expertise to help us in reestablishing and managing a healthy indigenous forest out there, which is our goal. And so with this, following this meeting, the task force hopes to have our first meeting to kind of organize ourselves in terms of a schedule, how we attack this in a week or two.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. We'll also move on to public comment, just in general. Does anybody want to speak on any particular issue? Thierry?
Thank you. Thierry Poiré, Harborview Road. First, I wanted to echo something that you just said, because as we were talking about the money in the funds, I was also thinking, well, I hope we're not shooting ourselves in the foot here. And but I had thought about it a little bit in advance, and I think it's important at some point to distinguish between when you were talking of beach replenishments. For instance, for me, beach replenishment,
That's not- yeah.
it's a maintenance operation.
Correct.
And when we're talking about the Resiliency Fund, we're talking about something which will be used in the event of a disaster or catastrophe, or at
Absolutely.
least exceptional
Those are two
circumstances.
separate
Or to
issues.
prevent, that's the other.
Yeah, so it's important that we don't let ourselves be dragged into a discussion with state officials about us having money that should be dedicated for regular maintenance operations, including when you look at the beach, even though beach replenishment is, in fact, preventative measures against disaster. So that's at least an argument that can be used. Second thing I wanted to echo on is what Rich said earlier about the feelings of the community about what's happening in the preserve. And I understand the chair's concern here that we should let the people who did the bulk of the work so far, and the Greater Lewis Coalition, in their work in organizing the park. But at the same time, to echo what Rich was alluding for, there is amongst the community, from the discussions that I had with some people, an interrogation as to whether the plan as it stands today is not going a little too far in the direction of a park, and a little not enough in the direction of a preserve. And in particular, the fact that there are these two parallel trails on both sides of the center conveys the impression that there's going to be a lot of human access in the park or in the preserve. This is a Freudian slip here, in the preserve. And as many people have an opportunity to walk their dogs around there and so forth and so on. There's a lot of wildlife in the preserves. You can see deer, you can see foxes, you can see rabbits, you can see squirrels, the turkey probably, yes, you can see snakes, turtles. There are lots of animals there. So, and this is why Rich said it's so important, because so far the members of the communities who have that concern have not had an opportunity to express themselves. So I think it's important to keep this in mind, and maybe to use your subcommittee as a vehicle to convey at least this interrogation to the member of the GLC, who will then, present whatever they feel is the most appropriate, because they have the knowledge of what, it works in terms of environmental protection. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to respond that that we don't even have the property yet, and we're working on it right now. But I have full faith and confidence in Rodney Robinson and Jim Ford and their team, in the sense we just heard. We have a master naturalist involved, Scott Wilkinson. We have Taryn, I think it's Taryn Davidson, right? Yeah, from the Delaware Forest Service. There's people here, and those are just those people. There's multiple others who have been involved, who have been walking the preserve auditing what invasive species are there or not. And so I think your point is well taken, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. There's going to be a balance between taking public comment, understanding it, relaying it, and some of it may be incorporated, some of it may not be. But, but that's part of any government. We're going to try to, facilitate public engagement, but at one point, does that become, how much can we do? And when it comes to public engagement, I don't know. I mean, we all want it. This buzzword of transparency and everything that's out there, it's always out there. And I happen to think the city of Lewis is very transparent in most of our, almost all the activities. I don't know of anything where we, and I don't want this to turn into a FOIA conversation because it won't end well for FOIA. But it is, we do the best we can, but we also need to reflect on the idea that progress needs to be made. We need to move forward, and we cannot allow just simple comment. We need constructive ideas, too.
Right.
That's what we're looking for. But thank you, and please, we will do everything we can to keep the public engaged, informed. But we also want to ensure that those ideas go back to Rodney and his team, and then, that could be very, very helpful.
What we're doing here.
Nope,
Is-
nope.
Yeah,
Public comment, if you're going to speak, we got to be at mics, please.
yeah.
Thank you.
I would just add to that when I worked at EPA and elsewhere, we came up with a saying, it's a right to be heard is not necessarily the right to be heeded. And it's important that's understood correctly. It is an important right to be heard, but it doesn't mean that, as you said, Cleo, that every idea is going to be taken and implemented. Some of them are contradictory.
Right.
And so,
Some of them
but
are
it is
good.
important that they be heard, and that I think is going to be a role
Right.
that the subcommittee can help play for the reasons that the comments that we just heard.
Okay. Oh, I think we had Marty first.
Well, if you would like to go.
No, go ahead.
Please.
No, help yourself.
Okay. Marty Thompson, 3 Flamingo Court. I'm also on the Parks and Rec Commission. I had sent some comments to, you got them, Cleo, and Janelle got them. It's about this document. I thought it was like the start of bylaws. And so my comments relate to deconflicting some of the things with Parks and Rec, and we are going to have to do some minor code changes, but that level of detail I don't think needs to be talked about today. You have the paper. I have an extra copy.
Good, no, I would love to see it, thank you.
What's in your packet there?
Oh, okay.
Should be.
Oh, I think I have it already, Marty.
I just sent them. I don't think you got them.
Oh, okay. Oh, these are from
It's the kind of
Marty.
things that make
Oh, your comments.
everybody's eyes roll except for the lawyers and the city planner, so,
And by the way, Marty's background is an attorney.
yeah. So we can deal with the specifics later. I also want to mention that we're going to need ongoing liaisons between the 4th Street Preserve people and Parks and Rec. Just one of the examples is, Rodney actually asked me earlier this year about applying for a Teddy grant, which is to plant trees for every Delawarean. It's the grant we used to plant all those trees behind the library and a whole bunch more trees in George Smith Park this spring.
We got turned down for this one this year, right?
We got turned down for 2026, but my point is, the city can only get one a year.
Right.
So we've got to each year go forward and say, who should get it this year? Should it be 4th Street? Should it be something else? I think that'll be an easy choice to make, but we need to be talking to each other. But we can do that. I see no problems. We just
But
need to
hopefully
talk.
Janet being on, will
Yes.
be very helpful being on the subcommittee.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
And that's it. Thanks.
That's it? Oh, thank you, Marty. Appreciate it. Jim?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for their participation and willingness to serve and continue on with this project. I hope it's an understanding that the Greater Lewis Foundation will not, once the city takes possession of the property, which will occur, as you mentioned, on the 15th, the Greater Lewis Foundation will not be making any final decisions on the property. We will be making recommendations to the city based on an input from different partnership arrangements that we have and people that are in the fields, their knowledge and their background, to hopefully expedite that process and get that to the city in an efficient manner. Once the city has the information, then the city makes the decisions on how to move forward with the details of the project. The Greater Lewis Foundation will also be working on the fundraising for the implementation of this project and hopefully the ongoing maintenance on that. We mentioned the state forestry, and Taryn, she has the ability to assist us with some funding. There's other state sources for funding that we're looking at. We're working on a continuation of the 5K race and the race for open space and the walk, and also the Rocking the Docks. Both of those organizations want to move forward and continue on, hopefully with a volunteer group from the community. So this project has had the community involved with it, as Rich and others have mentioned, to a great extent, and it's not to be stopped now, it's to be continued on. But an understanding as well is that with public funds comes public access. So this is not a preserve that then becomes stagnant without public access and has overgrowth. It's a management of an area for open space. So there will need to be a balance in there, with no disagreement whatsoever that the wildlife is going to be impacted, but let's minimize it if we can. But at the same time, it needs to be a public access area, and that's the balance I see that we need to do. So the idea of the task force is to move things along at a more expedited manner in some of the details of this project and bring it forward to the city, the subcommittee, and then if you want to move it on from there, however you move it on, keeping in mind that we have a one-year time frame to get this done with the conservation easement, as it's written in the conservation easement. So, there is a deadline here, and
I neglected
my
to
goal
mention,
would
that's a
be-
good point.
My goal would be to try to set that time frame at about 6 to 8 months, and then when we don't make it, we have some time. But we're under a time frame to move it, and that's one of the reasons I think the task force can be beneficial. So hopefully people understand that.
I think that's a really, really good point. I was semi-aware of that, I wasn't sure, but 1 year, that's a pretty tight time frame.
First of all, I just want to thank you for that. Those are the parameters that we're working under. The work of Greater Lewis Foundation and the leadership of Jim Ford and Pam in getting this done has been indispensable. One comment I would just make, and that is regarding the necessity of having public access to the preserve. If there isn't, I mean, if I know there's a trade-off, and we need to figure out how. And this is a trade-off we're figuring out as a country. How do we live with the critters? How do we balance human interaction in a way that is also allowing for wildlife and this preserved work? But if there is no access, or not no, but if even if that is minimized, public support goes down for an area that there is no ability for the public to have good access to. In our little preserve, that's less important than even in bigger areas. But anyway, I just think that that's an important principle to keep in mind.
And that's where public
as we move
education and
forward.
awareness will come in.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Any more public comment?